Okay. I'll let you take over. We don't. Go ahead.
Okay, Your Worship and Council. So following the meeting Tuesday night in Lake George, there are a number of things that we need to do and have done some. And I guess the purpose this morning, you had planned this meeting prior to the meeting Tuesday night, presumably expecting updates to decide on actions, to decide on directions. And so let me, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. I'll pull it a little closer. Right, so the meeting this morning was called prior to the meeting in Lake George being held. So I think the council's expectation was we'd get together, reflect over the last 24, 36 hours on what we heard and our thoughts, and that staff would come in this morning with some advice, and so that's what we're going to attempt to do. It isn't as neatly packaged as sometimes we like it to be, but here's where we are. So the discussion the other night really was around two issues. There was the compost issue, and then there is the water issue. And so I'll address them in whichever order you prefer. I think I'd like to go on the water issue first, if that's okay. Okay, so at the meeting, at the conclusion of the meeting Tuesday night, I had a quick conversation with Avon Cole, who was the consultant from Englobe, and as she indicated to the public, the finding in the water kind of threw them for a loop. They weren't expecting to find what they found. They did need to sort of regroup, step back, as she said. She committed to have an action plan or a plan of action by Monday for us. So we do not have her plan of action today.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. So we don't have her plan of action, but we will have that on Monday. And so when that is received, I would expect that you'll want us to look at it and bring it to you. So I think we have a meeting scheduled on Thursday, the Committee of the Whole, and I'll leave it to you for now. I'll come back to it in a minute to consider that we'll have some decisions to make there next week. Around the water impact, so we know, well, we tested, Englobe tested a number of wells in the area that were in what they determined to be the affected area, and there were some results that were of concern. And so how do we proceed there? I think we want to help out. So we have as staff met with Mr. Royal, who is a relative of the Nickersons, close relative, and discussed possibilities. And so on his advice, which I think is good advice, we reached out to a local company that does water treatment, and we provided them with the well test results from the wells in the affected area, and we asked their advice on what treatment options they could put on the table, treatment advice they could put on the table, and generally costs related to each of the properties. The one that is of most concern, I think we understand, you understand, I understand, is the Nickerson's property. Unfortunately, we don't have a finished recommendation on that for a whole house solution. Obviously, because of the lead finding, there's lots of concern around the use of that water, and so although he was able to provide a partial advice, he asked for some more time, and I've discussed that this morning with them, and they seem okay with that. So once we receive that advice, then we'll have something to go with. So I guess the way we're approaching this, or the way we've started to approach this, and if you're in agreement, we'll continue to approach this, is we're seeking professional advice on the properties that have been identified by Englobe as being within the affected area, and we're looking at the impacts that are reasonably probable to have been caused by something on our property, okay? So those are the parameters that, that we're using in the affected area, and some reasonable probability that it was caused by something on the town's property. So when we get the professional advice on each of the properties, what I'm suggesting to you, in the interest of expediting the process, if you're in agreement, we would approach each of the property owners with those results from the professionals and offer on behalf of the town to have that equipment, whatever it may be, installed on the property. We've asked for lease options and we've asked for purchase options. We're not sure, frankly, that they're both going to be available to us. In some cases, based on the preliminary information that we've received, it just wouldn't be practical to do a lease. The dollar amounts are not significant in most cases. So what I'd be asking for is your approval of that process, so that when we get the results, we can proceed to engage with the homeowners. Now, one of the things that we've been advised this morning is that if we're going to make this sort of effort, it would be prudent to do it on a without prejudice basis. In other words, we're doing this because there's an impact, and there is a reasonable probability that it's a result of something on our property, but we haven't proven that yet. And so just out of diligence, just a quick without prejudice. So that doesn't take away anybody's rights in the future. The property owner can accept the equipment without waiving anything, and we can provide it without legally admitting anything. It is just a prudent thing to do. So that is how we would initially deal with the immediate impacts in the homes. I'm sure Ms. Cole will come forward on the behalf of Englobe with a strategy in terms of repeated testing and perhaps different areas that she would suggest testing, and a strategy around finding the root cause of the presence of the lead, for instance, and perhaps other elements. I'll stop there in case there's any questions.
No, but before any motions made, we need to make sure that motion is very clear, that Linda has that and it's repeated, so we all are on the same page. Yeah.
Okay, so my intention there is that we will act. I mean, I am not. We do have some very qualified people who know water within our organization, but what I'm suggesting here is that we act on the basis of the professional advice that we receive from water treatment people, as well as the people at Englobe that we've worked with to this point.
So that's the motion, pretty much.
Well, it is also to give staff the authority to then proceed to procure and have installed the recommended equipment on the basis of an agreement with the homeowners as described.
Okay, good. Councillor Lanzo?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering to the CAO, I somehow recall Dr. Arnold did mention the need that maybe for further soil testing. Is that a factor that we should be considering as well at this point? Or are you satisfied, or is staff satisfied that just the water sampling may be in order to identify any potential problems that may exist on that site?
So I'm decoupling the two issues. The water issue that I'm speaking of now is in the residents' homes, and Avon Cole, on behalf of Englobe, will be recommending the testing regime around the water. What the compost issue and the compost situation, Dr. Arnold, I'll get to that, but I'm sort of decoupling the compost from the well water issue at this point.
I think you misunderstood me. My intention was that Dr. Arnold did mention the source of the one substance we did find, which was lead in the Nickerson's home, and the urgency to locate the possible source. And my point was focused on that lead in the property's home. I mean, the compost we know is not causing anything negative as far as we know, is what the experts have told us. But to find the source of find a source that may be on our property. We don't know if it's on our property, but to find if their source is on our property, I believe Dr. Arnold's suggestion was that we may want to look at soil testing further on our property to see if indeed there is any possibility that any contamination may be coming from our property that would affect the water in the Nickersons and the Gray home.
Yes, so, sorry, I misunderstood the question. Englobe, I expect that to be part of what we receive from Avon on Monday. And we'll clarify that, Chad, if we can today, to make sure that that is within the scope of what we will see Monday.
Good? Yep. Do you mind coming up here during it, please?
Is that microphone on? Is that microphone on?
I think Linda put it on. No, but it's for taping. We're taping.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? I just want to make one point clear. Immediate effect to the people of Lake George, good people of Lake George, they should be taken care of ASAP, and I'm sure you guys are well underway with that. My other main concern is I don't hear anything talking about the lake and doing an extensive test on this lake, because the way that I see it, one of the gentlemen that stood up at the meeting said the fellow that ran the sawmill was a shady customer at best, buried stuff on the property, oil, machinery, whatever. Half of the flow goes to the lake, half of the flow goes down to those people, and we don't know how it's traveling through the ground. That we're not making the mistake here and not looking at the lake, because there's been nothing really harped on or said on the lake. And there's 7,000 people that count on Lake George. If we've ruined this water supply, this town is going under, guaranteed. So these people, it's immediate, it's now. The lake is the second issue. And I want to make sure that I made the statement that we want to make sure for the people of the town of Yarmouth that this water supply is in good health.
Yeah, you can answer that.
So on that, in order to do testing immediately adjacent to the property at the lake in the cove, my understanding from discussion yesterday is that we are going to cut out the road that used to go down to the camp. We're going to make that more accessible so that Rob can get down in there more frequently and take tests directly in that area. His only means up to this point for taking tests out in the lake are an electric motor boat. So we're going to do stuff on site to get him down into that cove so that he can do that testing. In addition to that, in conversation, it's been suggested that there might be, well, at least there are stories, local knowledge, local belief that there may be impacts on the property outside of the clearing. And so I've discussed what I know of those stories at this point with Chad and with Rob, and we're going to do some exploration on the site to make sure that we either verify and identify, or that we can dispel or sleep at night.
Well, that's a fair statement. What as Councillor Langell says, he said that the water never reached the lake at the first statement here, and there's testing drilling that I agree with Councillor Langell, and what he also said, that the land does absorb some of this stuff, and we're talking over a 20-year span here. And where the test wells were, they were on the top elevation of the land, and there should have been test wells done at the bottom before they run off, so that you can tell if the soil has been contaminated and if it's still going into the aqua thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And that you know, I at this point in time, given what we know today, I can't disagree with that. The test wells that were drilled were around a specific issue around the dipping tank, and you know, that's unfortunate that you know, a broader view wasn't taken. Maybe if some of the local stories had been known or shared with Jakes Whitford was the company at the time, maybe they would have recommended a little more exploration other parts of the property.
That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement. We'll just make sure that we do our due diligence and find
Absolutely.
out where we are with the contamination we got now with these people and the contamination that might come into that lake and come into this town.
Something else I'll add, and for your benefit and for council, we are getting cooperation from the community. Some of it is being done fairly quietly in terms of the stories and the first-hand knowledge of what occurred on the property when the mill was operating, right? And that's important because, you know, something, as we just said, something different might have happened 11 years ago if some of that information was shared with the consultants, the environmental consultants. So if we can gather that now,
Fair statement.
that'll help us to hone in on the issue. So we appreciate that, and if anyone's watching the stream this morning, or if anybody knows anybody who has a story, who has a concern, whether they can verify it or not, if they could share it, it'll help us in sort of putting together the picture of what might have occurred and help us to help the consultants find the problems.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so we're gonna go back to what you were asking for. Yes, well, not yet. No, nobody made the motion. Linda's just gonna double check to see the wording. Usually we just say I move that, but this is too big to
Okay, so,
move. We need to make sure. Yeah.
okay, on the issue of
Can I just say one thing?
Can you put your light on?
If and when you say the motion, then one of us can either move that motion, second it, and whatever.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as we understand what we're asking. Okay, so CAO, if you want to, are you going to read the motion?
I am.
Okay, he's going to read the motion and we'll go ahead.
Yep.
Nice and loud, lean right in there.
Lean right in there, okay. So on the issue of the wells in the affected area, the impacted area, that we act on the basis of professional advice from water treatment professionals and Englobe and give staff authority to proceed to procure and have installed the recommended equipment on the basis of an agreement with the homeowners as described. So as described, meaning without prejudice.
Can we put that in there? Do we have to put without prejudice? We should. Put it in there for sure. Okay. Moved and seconded? Any more discussion? Anybody, do you want to come up? You come right up.
We all know who I am by now, I'm sure. Adam Russell. Just a question, I keep hearing affected area. What is the affected area?
Good
How about
question.
define that for us, please?
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you,
I shut it off,
don't
sorry.
turn yours off.
So, Englobe had originally recommended to us what area was likely to be the affected area. So the wells that we tested, with the exception of Mr. Jackson's well, his well was tested as one that was identified outside the affected area as kind of a well to see what are local conditions. All the other wells that we tested are within the affected area. And again, that was a determination by Englobe. We didn't tell them where to test. We said, tell us what to do. So if your well was tested, and I know it was obviously, then that motion encompasses you.
Okay, just for clarification, so everybody knows the affected area, right?
Right.
Because
And you know, as we go forward, if we learn new information through the testing and through the work that our consultants do, if the parameters of affected area change, then obviously so will the things that council approves for the affected area.
right, because those first tests are just a flash in the bucket, right? We really, to base anything on them right now is kind of not concrete. We can start with it, but you know, you need multiple tests just to prove that we actually have a timeline and sink it in play, right?
again, we're going to take the advice of the professionals in terms of the frequency and the testing regime that they recommend based on what they've seen. You know, when they first came in, what they knew was we were concerned about compost,
Yeah.
what it might contain, and its impact on local wells. What they've discovered is another potential source of contamination, and if they determine that the potential affected area for that is different than what they had presumed around compost, then we expect them to advise us on that.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Adam. Any more questions before we, just want to make sure you're good? Okay, question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried.
Okay, so on the Englobe recommendations that we're expecting to receive Monday, so one of the issues that is important, there are a couple of issues I want to just talk about here, and we'll see where they go. One is engagement of the community. I mean, some people here in the audience have been to several meetings, are clearly engaged, and we have promised, and I think it's something they expect us to live up to, is this openness and collaboration. So when I receive advice, the professional advice that we will be bringing to council, normally advice does not get shared with the public until an agenda is issued. So we always include our recommendations and whatnot on an agenda when we issue it. The question here is around that protocol. I think it's important that they understand what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, have the opportunity to question. I think Dr. Arnold and Ms. Cole were very good in terms of wanting to engage with the residents. And my suggestion would be is that as we receive this information, and even as we're contemplating asking for the information, that council support a communication protocol that allows staff to, not allows, but more specifically direct staff to share that information with the residents in what we know or what we expect to be the affected area.
So first question, how do you do that?
Well, that's the mechanics of it are another question. There are several people here. I spoke to Melody yesterday afternoon about that particular interest. I don't know if if we can agree that a couple representatives of the affected area will sit with Chad, our manager of public works, and myself in a, let's say, and maybe a member of council to just review these things, to share these things, or if you want us to expedite it and simply share things by electronic means with those in the affected area that wish to receive the information. I'm open, and maybe it isn't fully cooked at this point in terms of how we would do it, but that we would do it, I think, is what I'm looking for, that your agreement.
My only concern with that is that we want to make sure whatever information you have is verbatim to them, as in, we don't want, I'm going to say it to you guys, we don't want you to have to pass it on to 10 people. We know how everything gets lost in translation. So I guess the tighter it is, the better.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know what role the Watershed Advisory Group has, but I think there's going to have to be a kind of a liaison group between staff here in Town Hall and the residents in Lake George, so something doesn't get bypassed, something doesn't get missed. There's not, you put something up and we missed it. There's going to be, I know there's enough wherewithal out in the audience right now that there should be some good communications going on between town and the residents in Lake George, but there's got to be some kind of quasi-committee set up that they have a representative out in Lake George, if it's Rob or if it's Adam or whoever they choose, that maybe we direct, if it's not the CAO, maybe Chad, to get that information and maybe have a quicker link of communication, because I think it's really important that nothing gets missed, nothing gets overlooked. And Jeff, you said you talked to, is Ava from Englobe? Are they going to be coming back to Yarmouth again? Is there an opportunity? They're going to be coming back and doing some testing. I don't know if they come on the site herself and does it, but it might be an opportunity again to engage the experts, bring them in. I think this issue is so important that if they have to come out of the way and we have to bring them in, bear the cost, maybe to go over some of the reports, what they found originally in some of the original test sites, what they're finding now, and what they think they're going to, the next steps for the professionals is. So we have to keep that link completely wide open, and I think there's going to have to be another set of communications set in there with the residents out there.
Go ahead, and then, Ken.
Right, so, you know, if we can, we haven't had, I don't know how much they've talked about it sorry, I'm not sure how much you've talked about it in the community in terms of how you might envision that happening. From my perspective, for instance, so we receive a report on Monday. I would like to read it, have maybe a Skype call with Avon just to go over it, so we understand it before it comes to you folks for decision. That Skype call, that sharing of the document, should be done with whatever representatives of the area, so that they can participate and understand and question, you know, throughout the entire process. At the end of the day, you know, when all is said and done, when the process is complete and whatever is done that needs to be done, they need to be able to sleep at night. They need to be able to, you know, be comfortable that what's been done is the right thing. And so the only way they're going to have that assurance is through participation and engagement. So.
Yeah, but I know Council Manager, but just one quick other point is maybe involve the municipal representation in the Lake George area. I think it's Mr. Paquette, or maybe invite the warden in also, but I think they should be involved in the process.
So here's the you know.
Just for the information side.
Yeah, and we have, to some degree, competing interests here, because the other thing that I was going to speak about is the need for expediency. So when we receive a report, it's going to have recommendations in it. I don't think that, you know, I'm even in my own mind contemplating, without having seen how big it is, you know, how quickly are we going to react to these and make decisions, right? So as a council, you typically meet on your regular schedule once a month. You also meet as committee of the whole. We also do emergency council meetings. So I'm going to be asking you to consider that kind of a standing order that for meeting on decisions around this issue, what is the protocol that you want to follow? How much notice do you want to meet?
You know, and what's the, under the MGA, what we would call an emergency? Yeah. That council? Under the MGA, what's the standard notice? Because this issue is of the utmost importance, and we
Right.
want to be able, to do this as quick as possible,
Yeah. So-
because
To answer that question, and I'll let the solicitor correct me, is the MGA says that the mayor can call a meeting with 2 days' notice, and for an emergency, okay? Now, we have to agree that this is an emergency, right? Because that's not the
I think we've
that's-
agreed to
That's
that.
not defined in the act, right? The other part is, you know, once we agree we have an emergency, you know, perhaps we can establish our own protocol right now that we're into it. You know, if you think 2 days is adequate, then we can go with that. But I just want to set the expectation around the table about how we're going to act. When we have something for recommendation, when we've shared it, when we're going to bring it forward, if it's Mayor Mood, please call a meeting, 48 hours notice. Then everyone has the same expectation, and nobody's asking us in 2 months, well, why are we having so many meetings, and, you know, I need more notice. I'm trying to set the expectation and the plan around your decisions, and also mindful that I don't want to put you in the position of being asked to make decisions without adequate time to consider, so.
Good.
Fair? Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that's a good idea, but I also think, given the interest in the area, I personally would like to see us have a meeting at the fire hall on a regular basis with the residents that's open so that people can come, because there's two groups of people that attended that meeting on Tuesday night. A Group A, which was, of course, the residents in the affected area or in the community, but also we had a number of residents from the town of Yarmouth who are concerned about the quality of the drinking water that I'm consuming today. We do know, as fact, that our drinking water has not been harmed in any way, and we do know from our lab tests and tests that are being done that the Lake George water supply is still as excellent as it's always been. We do know that, and we do know that our staff is very diligent. We do know the testing is going on a regular basis, and that was confirmed on Tuesday night. However, that being said, I'm delighted to hear that you're clearing the road down to the property so that it's accessible. I know when I was down that with Mr. Gray and Mr. Russell, that was a big concern with the amount of brush that was growing up in case of fire. It was very difficult for a fire road, but also to make a good access for Mr. Chetwynd to go in to do his tests on a regular basis would be excellent as well. The question that I was going to raise is I think the sharing of information is extremely important. I think the residents are expecting that, and I'm delighted that we're doing that. However, I also think the need exists that staff should be meeting with the residents. I mean, they are the experts. They are the individuals who know what's going on. We're merely the politicians that represent the people, and we, I guess, make the final decision upon recommendation of staff. But to me, I think once a month or once every 2 weeks in the issue, and again, I'm focusing still on the lead issue. We haven't got into the compost issue yet, so I just want to make sure the focus is still around that lead, on the chemical issue that's there. But I really think the idea of a small little committee to consulting or that is good, but on the other hand, to share information, I'd like to see open meetings in the fire hall that anybody can attend just to hear it as this saga unfold.
Okay. So where are we? Do you need next?
We don't have a motion.
No, we don't.
So I was going to say, in the interest of expediency,
Lean into that.
sorry.
I can't even hear you,
All right.
sorry.
In the interest of expediency, what I'd like to do is share the information, give the opportunity for participation and engagement. What I want to try to avoid, and we talked about some ideas, different people that we should include. I don't want to hold up, as an example, the Skype meeting with the consultant, the recommendation coming forward to council, hold that process up to assemble a meeting of a subcommittee, to review. So what I'm proposing, without having discussed it with the residents, is that they can identify for us a few key contacts, and that we will engage with those few people. They can disseminate, share. We can meet, we can meet as regularly, frankly, as anyone wants to share information. What I'm concerned about is slowing down process around decision making. So we can share the information, we can invite them to engage and participate in our normal process of getting to a decision point. They have a concern about expediency, and I don't want to slow down that process unnecessarily. So I will slow it down to the point that they're comfortable with, right? If it's more important on their end that we meet, we discuss, they understand before we make a decision, well, that's great, right? I don't want to structurally slow it down at this point so that we can't get to a decision in a manner that is going to satisfy them. So I'm kind of saying we'll put them in control of weighing the balance of sharing the information and understanding against the expediency of making the decisions.
Okay? Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, this doesn't really have to be complicated. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, you can set up committees, you can have all the meetings and everything you want. I guess if I lived out there, I would be concerned about the information that I'm receiving if they have a spokesperson that is taking the information and bringing it back to the affected people out there. I think it'd be more expedient, it'd be more quicker, right? If they're going to sit in on the meetings with you, Jeff, is that what you're saying? They pick somebody from out there, a spokesperson? That's great. I mean, and they've been doing that all along. And that's great. The information that they've been passing on and having the meetings, everything, it's working great, I think. But if you start setting all these in-betweens and what have you, I don't know how fast that works. I don't know how quick that is. If you get the information, pass the information on, rather than withhold and wait till you set up a committee and get the people in place. I think it just takes too long. If you make it simple, and we should leave that up to staff. Well, I'm not an expert on it. I don't know a whole lot. I only getting the information from the experts, and you're passing it on to us, and we make the decisions from what the experts are saying. So, I mean, it's plain and simple. I think. I don't think we should make it too complicated. We get the information. We give the people out there the information. That's it. And then we all know it, and then we have to deal with what's in front of us. And I think that's just as simple as that. I guess that's all I got to say.
So the only point in between there, correct me if I'm off, we get the information and the CAO passes it on to the residents. But I think what he's saying is, before we sit down as a council and make a decision, he wants to make sure that the residents understand that's what you're saying, basically. Because we don't want to make a decision if you can't come, the residents can't come here and ask the questions every time. We can't do this. So, go ahead, CAO.
Right. So ideally, I'd be dealing with representatives as opposed to, you know, 6 or 7 households, because, you know, and again, it's an expediency, and I think they need to be a little bit in the driver's seat on that end. I will share the information, and you know, if they're comfortable with representatives being engaged, I'm comfortable with that. If they want to establish a committee of the people in the affected area and meet and review and ask questions and make sure they all understand before we proceed, you know, if that's the balance that I'm suggesting we put in their hands. But I'm looking for you to give me the authority, obviously, to share that information, the information that will contribute to decisions as quickly as we have it,
Yes.
and to gauge the decision-making process around their needs. So, if they get a recommendation, let's say the recommendation we're going to receive Monday, we could be in a decision-making position here on Thursday. Mm-hmm. If they are not comfortable with us making a decision based on that information because they have more questions, are you comfortable with holding that decision until?
Yes.
I guess
Yes. Yeah. Good.
they need. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, don't turn your light off. Councillor Dennis.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to be able to share and review information as it becomes available to the Lake George residents.
Good. Can I have a seconder? Moved and
In the
seconded.
affected area, yes.
Because there's a lot of
Yes. It's
Yes.
In the affected area. We just added in the affected area. Moved and seconded. Okay. Any more discussion on that? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. CAO?
Can I say this? Yeah, the reason I asked for that in the motion is obviously all the information that you will be asked to base your decisions on goes on our public agendas and is available to everyone who has the internet anywhere. The motion, as I understand it, is about before we get to the decision point. Right.
Okay, so, and then the process after that, if there's, are decisions to be made, is that you just let me know and I'll call that emergency. And I think everybody at the, is anybody, let me ask this, is anyone opposed to that 48-hour emergency meeting, given that we want to get this taken care of? Okay? Yeah, I mean, I can send a note out for the next day if we can do it. If not, I'll give you the 48 hours. But 48 at the most.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
An emergency meeting doesn't need any notice. Yeah.
Go ahead.
If the mayor determines there's an emergency, you may meet without notice. If it's just, you want to call a meeting that's not an emergency, you have to give council 3 days notice and the public 2 days notice.
Okay. Yep, you earned your cookie today. So, so I may just call and say, come in later in the day, and the residents will know that anyway, pretty much, so. Okay, good. What else? Anything left here? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I shut it off.
I thought it was on.
Yeah. So on the compost, we've, some of the information that we saw Tuesday night, well, I said it then, I'll say it now, is I had not looked at it in the detail, I guess, that Dr. Arnold went through it and didn't have the full appreciation of the requirements around the sharps, and that to me is a very that is a very limiting factor in terms of what we're going to be able to do there. It kind of rules out a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of compost on the site. We know that, and in order to properly compost, sorry, whatever you want to call it, in order to deal with it, I've had a couple of back and forths with Dr. Arnold on it, and he is wanting to provide us with some advice. I think my opinion on it, prior to receiving that advice, is that the material itself is going to have to be gathered. It's going to have to be either disposed of or held, dried, screened, garbage dealt with, and if we're able to do the job that Dr. Arnold did with his containers, we would end up with some Class A component of Class A compost in the material. Just to give you something that Dr. Arnold didn't share the other night, I think there is a lot of Class A compost in that material, and my personal opinion is that whatever we do in terms of the gathering, that rather than simply send it to a landfill in its entirety, I think it is worthwhile to consider and do a cost-benefit analysis, I guess, perhaps on the screening of the material before there's a final disposal. Dr. Arnold did a test on the material that he collected based on a weight analysis. So one of the parameters they didn't talk about the other night in our operating permit and around Class B compost is that Class B compost can only have 1% contamination by weight. So take all the contaminants, the foreign matter, that can only add up to 1% of the weight of the overall material. The sample that he took from Lake George, if I remember correctly, it was about 1%. The samples he took from the compost facility, I believe, were around 0.06%. So that tells me not a lot that's of much use, other than to say that there's a lot of compost in that material, and if we get to the point of having gathered it and can screen it, there's a potential to yield the very good compost that's within that garbage, and then we can dispose of the other stuff. The benefit of that is disposal is done by weight. Right? You're going to pay whoever takes that stuff by weight. Compost holds water very well. So in disposing of it, you're going to be paying to bury water. When it's dry, and Dr. Arnold had some dry samples there, it is not very heavy. but it does hold water. So, you know, at this point, I'm saying the solution is going to look like gathering it up, obviously removing it, possibly screening it, disposing of the garbage, and, you know, there may be at the end a product that we'll be able to use in some application or sell.
Councilor Landro?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, we've got to bear in mind that we're dealing with two standards. You mentioned, CAO, the standard that you gave was the CFIA standard, which was the 1% residual per weight. However, we also had the CCME standard, and the CCME standard seems to be the one that the environment was leaning towards as being more, as the one we should be accepting. And I think our problem is that we weren't following the CCME standard in the first place, or just as a suggestion. We do know that Dr. Arnold did comment at the meeting on Tuesday night that it's going to be very difficult to get that material down to CCME standards. Personally, I would like to see that compost out of there tomorrow. I'd like to see us get rid of that, move it. Now, if we want to move it to our own site at the solid waste park and put it on property there, if that is acceptable to environment, great. If you want to screen it, great. I do know that our compost is almost always wet at the site. We do not have an inside facility. To wait on site for that to dry could be several months. The residents have made it very clear they want it out of there. I personally would like to see it out of there, like, as I said, tomorrow. Where it goes for screening, as long as it's in a place that we know there's nothing negative in that. We were assured by all the science, we were assured by all the experts on Tuesday night, the residents were assured there's nothing in that compost that is bad, with the exception of the residuals, of the various materials that are basically unsightly, and hence the term garbage evolved during the meeting. So I'm also very concerned, though, with that second set of tests that we haven't got from Dr. Arnold yet, and I think we have them now? Yeah.
Second, Phil, it's okay.
Sorry, Dr. Arnold sent me an email last night, and I'm just in the process of bringing that up, and it does address that question, so carry on.
Okay, good. Because that set of tests was some couple of other elements that we need to know. But personally, I would love to make a motion at this minute, but I'm going to hold until I hear the results from Dr. Arnold. But personally, I think it's got to be taken off-site right away. And then, but the other issue I have to the CAO, at one point in the discussion, there was a point made, I believe it was when we talked to Dr. Arnold in there last Friday. A comment was made, I'm remembering, I didn't have it in my notes, that there was a concern of disturbing the soil up there might exacerbate any problems that may be in the soil. Is Dr. Arnold made any further comment on that? I thought that was said there was a concern that if there's something there that shouldn't be there, the movement of vehicles, backhoes, etc., may cause some issues. And I do know, in reading some of this literature, they do mention that products such as lead can be there today but gone tomorrow. It's caused by there's other factors. So I just was curious about that as well.
Sorry.
No, do you want Phil to, can you speak now, or do you want Phil to?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I had it here. Yeah, so the passage, so what he said to me in an email that I read this morning, he sent it last night. The pathogen results are in, and we have good news. There are no salmonella, usually the case, and the fecal coliform count is 17, well below the maximum threshold of 1,000. Okay? So,
Good.
yeah. It passed all the tests, and so I'm sorry, I was scrolling through the email, looking for that information when you were asking your last question, so if you could repeat, I'll try and answer.
Yeah, my question was, CAO, was there was a comment, I believe, and I may be having a senior moment, that that was made, that he had that he was concerned that further movement on the soil on the actual site, like if we come in with trucks and backhoes and tractors and whatever, that we could be exacerbating the problem that may exist up there. In other words, and this goes into the lead. He expressed that concern, and I didn't know whether there's been any discussion along that line or not. If there's going to be an issue, because I hate to see us cause even higher levels or spike something, because hypothetically, if there is something there, which we don't know if there's something there, but suddenly we make something there, more there, by movement of a vehicle, will there be any danger to that? And that was the concern. Although I'm anxious to see it out of there, on the other hand, I definitely don't want to cause any further make the situation worse. That was my question.
So the answer will be similar to what you've heard earlier. Is I think our best course of action here is take the advice of the professionals. So Dr. Arnold, has an expertise. He's a chemical engineer, PhD. He's an expert in compost. But we also have Avon, Cole, and the Englobe people who are on the water side of this issue. So I think if we formulate a plan that, respectful that we have two issues, that we ask them for the advice on how not to make things worse and how to make things better as soon as possible. I think, again, following the advice of the professionals is where we should be making our decisions.
Exactly, and I think the point is, I think the question should be given to our experts is, when is the earliest possible time that we can remove that material from that site safely? In other words, that is, I think, the key question. I think that's what the residents are seeking. They want to know, when can we move it out? And I think that should be a priority right off the bat, but on the other hand, with other risk variables in place.
So on that line, if council were to make a motion that staff develop with expert advice the plan to remove that material as soon as possible.
Yes.
So that puts the onus on us to come up with the plan with professional advice, obviously working with environment.
Yes.
So that we have a place to take it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Then that's the kind of motion that will.
Perfect. I definitely would move that motion. Did you get that okay, Linda? Good.
Okay. Do we understand what he just said? They're just going to work with... Yeah, Adam, go ahead. Yep, come on up so we can... I'm just going to give... do you want to ask your question, Phil? Yep, go ahead, Adam.
My concerns with the compost is that it didn't meet the CCMA or CCME guidelines, and it says it's to be disposed of properly. Mm-hmm. So when we have a spill of something, we don't get the chance to go on site, clean it up there. We got to remove it, make it to whatever you want to make it, wherever you got to make it. That's yes. What I'm saying, okay? Understandable, but my other concern is the contaminants from the water that are in this compost. Like, I'm going to give you the water tests. I'll give you some copies. There are some of these contaminants that are actually in these water samples that come out of the center of these composts. So my other concern is this stuff contaminated regardless? If this stuff is getting to the ground and going into the groundwater, so on and so forth, how is it getting into the compost? And compost, we know, will absorb most of these chemicals.
So on that one, I haven't seen the test results you're talking about, but again, we are going to rely on the advice of the professionals. So if you can provide the results, and if you're willing to talk to Englobe about how you did the testing, where you did the testing, they can look at the results, they can draw the conclusions, and make the recommendations.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Adam probably touched on the point that I was going to bring up, is maybe, and Council Lands will get the stuff off the site, bring it to where they got it. They got to screen it, cure it, do whatever they do. Do it where they already got the stuff from, and let's get it out of there.
Okay, good. So we've got a motion on the floor. Question. Any more discussion? We good? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Next. water tests, post, I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on my list this morning on this topic, so I might be missing something. If you guys had something else you wanted to ask about, got a number of residents here. You know, if there's anything else, if
Yeah.
there might be something I'm missing or
Is-
forgetting.
Are we good to go? I could see you moving in your seat.
You see me shuffling around, right?
Yeah.
Morning, council.
Good morning.
Just again to the water tests. Again, our house is obviously the one that's I would say higher in the charts with in regards to what contaminants are found in the water. Council has moved to bring us water and stuff to use. I mean, it's not fun lugging water around to shower, cook with, whatever and whatnot. Council recognizes that, you know, it is a problem with our water and we cannot use it. We've taken small steps to mitigate the risks to us. But where we recognize it is a problem, and I know you are seeking information to understand what systems need to be put into place. But while we're doing that, it's still negligent to have us in the house with that water. I mean, we need something kind of put into place as soon as possible. So I guess what we're saying is I know Monday you're seeking advice on the systems and stuff to have in place. How long after Monday do we expect to be waiting to have something put in place?
Yeah, certainly. Go ahead, CAO.
Okay, so there's a little misunderstanding there that I'll try and clarify. We sought the advice yesterday on the water systems, and the folks that we went to weren't able to provide the full picture by the end of the day yesterday. They may have the full picture by the end of the day today, you know, or tomorrow. I didn't do the communication, so I don't have a clear expectation on that. But what I think the motion council made here today gives staff the authority to move forward with that as soon as we have those results. Okay, so the Monday results are around the further testing of the wells and further groundwater sampling and honing in on the source of the contaminants. It's got nothing to do with what we need to do in your home at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. Anyone else? Good? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The other topic I did want to bring up on this matter, Jeff, is it possible, and I don't know what my colleagues around the table feel, I would feel a little bit more comfortable, given the light of this and comments that Mr. Horton made, that if we upped our testing at the water treatment plant, especially for the metals. I know we have an agreement now with Maxim, we do it once a month, but I think for the next little while, I would like to see us err on the side of caution. I know that Mr. Chapman is going to be going down to do samples in the cove where the water is, and I know we haven't had any issues with the main water, but considering the rains, the movements, and that sort of thing, is it possible that maybe we could step up the testing, just maybe instead of once whatever our routine, we do it once a week, I know, for the regular water, but I'm thinking the metals, I believe, is only once a month. I was wondering if we can up that to maybe once every 2 months, twice a month.
So on that, if you don't mind, can I seek some advice on that? Okay, if that's the motion, to seek advice on maybe increasing the testing.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to make a motion that staff be directed to seek advice as to the proper procedures and frequency of testing we should be doing at Lake George for the water treatment facility.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Anything else for this part? Good? Okay, so I need another motion to go in camera. Oh.
Not this issue.
No, it's not this issue. Yeah, by all means.
So, Your Worship, we have currently an accepted offer on a property the town owns. There has been we've received information that one of the conditions of that offer cannot be fully satisfied, and so I'll be seeking direction from council to further that negotiation, because obviously some negotiation is going to be required. Under the Municipal Government Act, council can meet in camera to discuss negotiation strategy. That property's in the town of Yarmouth, and clearly identified on our agenda.
Okay, good. So a motion to go in camera. Thank you. Yep, yep. We're just gonna, we'll go in there in 2 minutes, because in case anybody needs to ask anything. Kevin? Kevin, are you good?